Alright guys, so we're in week 3 and last week we were able to, let me just get the list here. Okay. Alright, so last week, well, the video is there as well, and what we were able to do was to go through all those steps for the 4 VMs and deployed the Windows one with infrastructure roles, DNS, DHCP, Active Directory as well, and took a snapshot. And then we deployed Google Chrome. I have to check that. And later we're going to be deploying Software SAN here. On the E6i host side, we went for their virtual hardware configurations, and then from the DCUI console, direct console user interface, we configured the hosts in terms of the IP addresses, the name, the UPN suffixes. Now I would want to check this out as well, so I'll just revisit first of all the first machine, smart ABC, get ABC ship 123, dot ship 123. Excuse me. Ooh, okay, so what I see here, first of all, if I just minimize this, so I see here on the bottom right, and you may also check that because it was a trial version that was supposed to be activated. In my case, last week there was, or that last class, I didn't have internet connection, so let me just quickly give myself internet connection. You guys can check it out on the bottom right side on the top of the clock if you have 180 days written there, or if you have Windows license is expired written there. I'll go for settings, and if it is expired written there on your side, then you can just right click here on Windows machine and then click settings. Why are we going here? Because I would want to add another network adapter from here to connect it to NAT to give me internet connection. So as soon as the trial version of Windows is connected to internet, it automatically downloads files that activates it for 6 months with all the features. So that's more than enough. So what I'm doing is, I see that expired message there. What will happen now if this message stays here is that it's gonna shut down every half an hour. So that's bad. I'm just gonna click add here and go for the network adapter and click finish. It is already connected to NAT, so I expect here to have an internet connection quickly. And the yellow triangle is now gone and we have internet connection. I'll just confirm that from this deprecated browser as well. Also, we did not deploy Google Chrome, or I did not deploy that there. I need to do that too. So yes, I have internet connection. That's the first thing I confirm. Second thing, I'll minimize this browser here. Excuse me. And this license, the Windows license expired, this message should be gone. So I'll right click here and, well, I should give certain maybe 1 minute or maybe 50 seconds or something like that. Refresh. As soon as it refresh, now it changes to valid for 180 days. So that's very good. Now make sure that your device shows beside the clock 180 days. If it shows exactly like that, so you're good. You don't have to do anything. But if not, then what I did, you can just, if you're following through the video, you can do that right now. If you're good, then let's go ahead. That's first thing. Second thing, if I go with the list here, so we were able to deploy Active Directory, DNS, so infrastructure is the most critical one. DHCP, also important. And we took a snapshot as well. And then we do need Google Chrome. You guys might have installed it. At that time I didn't have internet for some reason. So I'm just gonna make sure that I install Google Chrome. Why? We do have Edge here as well. We do have but the thing is, the choice of browser for us will be Google Chrome. You can also use Firefox. Those are easier in terms of adding going for add-ons if we need. Otherwise normally it's going to be HTML5 based configuration. So we're going to see that now. So I'm going to go for this Google Chrome as well and install it for my machine. So I'll just go to the Windows machine here, and I'm just checking here on Server Manager and in local server that Internet Explorer setting here is set to off, which we did before. So it is already off for you as well if you've been following. Domain firewall is on. I'll have to shut it down later as well, but what I'm trying to go for now is just the tool. So I'll just go for download Chrome, and this download now, and uncheck this to download Chrome. It downloads this file chrome setup.exe, and I'll click save. Maybe I need it later as well. Well, suppose it gets corrupted. So exe file is downloaded, and I click run, and yes. So once the Chrome is deployed, then we'll go for the next steps, which are well, before the next steps, I'm just checking all the configuration is good, is intact from last week. So Chrome is there. I'll just close this Explorer IE, and yes. So if I go back to my steps here, Chrome was remaining, so that's done. I'll go down and that was not green, but I was green. Okay, later I'm gonna go for software SAN as well, but not now. If I go down, then we configured the previous all the three hypervisors here. So how much did we configure the hypervisors? I'm gonna go to the DC UI of anyone and check it out. That what is what is the configuration that we did, and is it still there? Obviously it's supposed to be there. It's just that before going ahead, we can check it out once more. In fact, if I go to E6i1 and I see DCUI, direct console user interface here, direct console user interface, I see 2 processor and 4 GB RAM, and yes, the name is given 192.168.2.2. the static IP is given, and the V6 IP. So well, I don't have to actually go inside because this is what I wanted, and the spellings are ESXi01. Why am I checking that? Because we're about to create an A record in DNS, because we need to access these hypervisors by name over the network from the Windows machine. So I'm going to go for E6i2. This is the DCUI of E6i2 hypervisor, ESXi02. Yes, we're good. 200.3, we're good. E6i3 is ESXi03 and 200.4. Just the IPs are according to the total number of machines, while names are the number of hypervisors we have. So E6i1 has 200.2, E6i2 has 200.3, E6i3 has 200.4. Okay. So I'm going to go back here to the Windows machine, and what are our next steps? So if I come down here, so obviously it's better to see that big picture as well of what we are doing. So I'll go for well, this is the big picture, and yeah, that's it. So I'll just put another one here. And yeah, so now what we need to do, we have already done these tasks here: static IP given, host name given. So if the next step would be that if the hypervisors have been configured properly, and the DNS, DHCP infrastructure roles are there, then the A and pointer records of each hypervisor needs to be added one by one, so we could access by name these hypervisors. Not only now, when we deploy the vCenter the server application VCSA, in that case we're going to also be needing access by name, so DNS being the most critical resource here. Now let's add the name and IP of 3 hypervisors inside our DNS, and then obviously after that we're gonna make a connection from Chrome here to any of the hypervisor. Yeah.
We did that, right?
Did we create the DNS already? Okay, let me check.
Yes, we did.
Okay, cool. So I forgot that, and let me go there. I'll go to Win1 and just confirm it, and Tools and DNS, and for our lookup zone, Netplus.local, exactly as you said. I do see 2 because I also connected from a second network card with internet and NAT. So Win01 is there. Otherwise, yes, as you said. So E6i1 2.2, E6i2.3, and E6i3 2.4. Okay, great. So reverse lookup zone, if we go there, yes, all these connections are there as well. Great. And let's go ahead then. So let's add a record. Oh, that's fine. I didn't actually. Now install Google Chrome, done. So connect to all hypervisors from the browser. Okay, let's do that now, and connect to the hypervisor. Then we're going to go for explore VMs, storage, networking, monitoring, admin sections of a hypervisor. VM, and they're going to create VM. We're going to create data stores as well, and we're going to go for networking. There we're going to add 8 network cards. I'm going to give you the reason why, and finally we're going to try to install the VCSA, the main enterprise grade application through which we're going to control the whole environment, and all other advanced features are in this enterprise grade application, VCSA or vCenter server appliance. So let's get going with the connect all to all hypervisors from the browser, just to see that we can connect by name to all of them. And if we connect to one, we should not be assuming that, okay, obviously we're going to be able to connect to all. Yes, we will be, but assumption is one thing in IT that is a dangerous thing. So how do we really go with that? So HTTP :// and then if I just type ESXi01, so will that really go ahead? I'm just going to type this name and press enter, and it says your connection is not private. Now we haven't deployed the security certificates that needs to be purchased from any certificate authority or CA like GoDaddy.com or any other verisign.com, digicert.com, and they are from $200 up to $2,000 as well. It depends on your needs and security depth. So that's why it's just saying that your connection is not private, since we know that this machine is our machine. It's okay, so this is not attackers. We can go down to advanced here, and if we go further down, so it says proceed to ESXi, and so we can just click that. Now this is going to work if this spellings of ESXi is correct in DNS, as well as what we gave there in the actual ESXi hypervisor inside the DCUI console. Okay, so here we're going to remotely connect. So the username is root, and the password, what password we gave it. In my case, I gave the class password, so it's small ABC, capital ABC, shift123 without shift123, right? And I'll just try to log in and connect to 7.0 hypervisor. It says here, join the VMware Customer Experience Improvement Program. We can just uncheck that, but if you want the data to be sent to VMware, you can just keep it checked. Let's press OK here. And so once we're here inside the hypervisor ESXi1, and that shows you the inside of the whole hypervisor. We're going to be exploring the whole hypervisor and all the sections of the hypervisor one by one. So if you understand hypervisor inside out, one hypervisor, then obviously you can control 1000 hypervisors as well. You would know they're all the same. But I was able to connect to the first one. I'll go to that Google Chrome next tab here to connect to the second and third one as well quickly, just to know that we have our connectivity working. So if we even if we just type here http:// and then ESXi01 instead of that 2, so yes, it also says your connection is not private. I'll again click advanced and then go down to proceed to ESXi2. And we know the drill now, so it's root. So once we check that username password is all okay, the connection is all okay, we're able to log in. So that is always good to go ahead and not having surprises when we really are trying to do something there. And I'm gonna go for HTTP, so it's already in the cache. 03, enter, and advanced, and proceed to ESXi03. Small ABC gather shift123 without shift123. So guys, any question anytime is welcome. Right, okay. Yeah, connectivity is good. Now once that is established, we'll try to explore inside. I don't need to stay connected to ESXi3 and 2. I'll just simply close this and close this. So simplicity, let's keep it simple all the time. I'll close this left side. I don't need to see all those other machines there in Vmware Workstation, so I'm going to close this here, just this screen. One more thing is that it's better to have this full screen used here in Vmware Workstation, because especially for vCenter server appliance, where there will be lots of windows and sections there, so a bigger screen would be would let you see better all the sections and the data inside. And okay, so here we're inside one ESXi1 here, and there's the host that is showing there, and this is get vCenter server. While this is just a link that takes you to the vmware.com. Now it's a good idea to create a vmware.com free account there on vmware.com, and they do give you trial versions of all the latest software in case you wanted to create your lab and you still don't have the keys available with you. You have been already provided with the official VMware student account where you can download all the software and the keys, 2-year keys. The keys are 2-year, but the voucher that you will get at the end of the course for the exam, 70% discount vouchers, will be 1 year only. Some students thought that the vouchers are also 2 years. They are just 1 year. After that, they expire. Anyway, we're talking about the keys, so that's why I said that. Okay, so here, create, register, VM, shutdown, reboot, refresh, the typical options. But if you go down here to manage, so this is ESXi1 and the system, hardware, licensing, packages, services, security, and users. Normally we are supposed to handle all this from across the central enterprise grade central application called vCenter. But suppose there are small organizations and they don't have a vCenter, or they don't want to have spend the money on the vCenter. So you could just remotely connect to a few hypervisors with few virtual machines there, and you can handle all this from there as well. So a system has advanced settings, auto start, swap, and time and date. Advanced settings normally, as the word says, advanced. So obviously, if you have specific requirements for these kind of scenarios where buffer cache, it goes down much longer for all kinds of connectivity and services that are offered. Suppose there's a NFC offers there, and there's a max result, host agent. Now these are obviously, once you go through ins and outs of your VMware course, and you see that, okay, what are the agents, host agents there, are we using SSL through certificate, and these are, and then CPU related all the features and services. So obviously you have to go a bit more deeper into the course and into the technology to really go through these services and make some tweaks. Otherwise, normally we're supposed to not be touching these advanced services for the hypervisor. So, but the thing is that it does talk about, or it does offer a lot of information about different critical components of the hypervisor. So suppose I select one and welcome message, then there's edit option here as well. And if I click the edit option, so whatever welcome message you want to give. So yes, we can make changes. It's like a registry as well. In Windows, we have registry there, and we're supposed to make changes there as a last resort only, right? So it's kind of that you have lots of sections in hypervisor. And many fault tolerance related information is there. FT, that is an advanced feature, and it's only implemented when you implement vCenter, and also when you create cluster, then FT comes here. So those related features as well here. Okay, so we get to know that advanced settings are here for pretty much all types of features that can be implemented on a hypervisor. So some tweaks and changes that you can make here are in the advanced settings of a hypervisor. You would want to do that from vCenter. And auto start, this is just enabled start delay. Now these are for the virtual machines. There's no virtual machine here because we didn't create one. But for the virtual machine, would you want them to be automatically started when you start your hypervisor? Suppose your hypervisor shut down for some reason for maintenance, and then when you start, so how long do you want the virtual machines on top of the hypervisor to be started? You want some delay there, you don't want them started at all, or after you want them powered off. So this is that setting for this particular hypervisor. But obviously there's a central management in vCenter where you can also handle this. And swap file, so that is if you've heard about page file in Windows, so that is that we can use some part of the disk as memory. So that is swap file here, and it is enabled obviously virtual machines when or hypervisor when it runs out of RAM, then it can also use some part of the disk as RAM. So settings for that, normally we're not supposed to touch that unless you have very good reason to change them. Time and date, it's do you have any NTP device, network time protocol offering device there? You can just put that device's IP there. Otherwise, current date and time, it's yeah, okay, that's actually wrong. So it's supposed to be connected to any NTP device there, and then it could just correct its time when we deploy the vCenter. So it's going to then be aligning with the time that is configured there in the vCenter. Also, there's hardware and PCI devices, and that is just whatever PCI devices or mainstream motherboards and SVGA and hardware related whatever VMware Hypervisor 7.0 is compatible with, and what our PCI Express devices it detects here, it can show here as well. So it does not detect any hardware here. Hypervisors are supposed to be installed directly on our hardware, right? Not on this test devices, and we are doing a nested virtualization right now. So otherwise, you can just check that what devices were detected here, capable or not, pass through authentication, hardware level. So these are, statuses come here when they detect the hardware directly. Power management, obviously you would want to, again and again, I'll keep on saying that you would want to change that from not the hypervisor but from the vCenter. But obviously, when do you want the machines to be saving some power or running at 80% or 50% at night when the machines are not being used? So for all that, you can just create a policy of power management there. Licensing, right now it's evaluation mode. You have the 2-year keys for in your VMware student portal, and when you put that, then you can see those features. So all the features are available for 60 days here, and after 60 days you have to purchase and sign a license here. Packages, since it's a Linux based machine, so applications are called packages here, applications, and any drivers that you see as well. Install and update to Broadcom, NetExtreme, Ethernet driver. So whatever hardware vendors it is compatible with, so under the packages you will see the type of driver software that you can upload for um, the iSCSI and for SAN connectivity, or for fiber optic network cards, and all kinds of features if they need extra software updates or drivers. So those drivers are showing here, but you can add any of that. Suppose you added a AMD drive display card with maybe 12 GB RAM for AutoCAD applications. Under the hardware, maybe it's a Dell hardware or HP hardware underlying, and on top of that you have a hypervisor. So that would just detect here, and you can install its drivers here as well from the site for that display adapter. Services then are obviously those services. DCUI, we use that service, right? We went inside the DCUI service, we changed the IP address to static. Yep.
So, regarding the hardware installation, now normally the EXSI is on the Linux platform. So we download Linux drivers for it, or we download the Windows drivers.
Well, it would definitely not be Windows drivers, but Linux, those which are compatible with this particular version edition of, so it's 7.0, and definitely it would be Linux based, because this whole software is Linux based.
Okay, but the host maybe it could be independent of whatever the operating system is, right?
Yeah.
So it's a virtual machine.
So in that case, you would install we would create a virtual machine, then you would install operating system of Windows, then inside the Windows you would go for those drivers.
Got it.
Cool. Okay, so as we were talking about this, then the services come, and those services which are needed are running, and which are not needed right now but later they would be needed. So Active Directory service, there's an Active Directory service that is stopped. Now what is this? No. Do we have Active Directory in hypervisors? No. Do we have Active Directory in vCenter? No. But this is the Active Directory connector that is available in hypervisor. You want to connect hypervisor directly to Active Directory. Why would you want to do that? So whatever number of users you have created in Active Directory, those users can be added to the hypervisor directly, or better, with vCenter. So suppose you create user John there in Active Directory, and then user John is a VMware administrator as well. So if the Active Directory is connected to the vCenter, user John can actually log in from the vCenter as well, and in vCenter you can then assign permissions to the user. Administrator permission, or desktop support permission, or just virtual machine admin permissions. So whatever level of permission you want to give. So there are these services, obviously whichever you need, you can just enable that, and whichever you don't need, they're stopped already. E6i shell and those daemons are there. NTP daemon is just service, so it is stopped right now. Suppose you do have a device for network time protocol NTP, then you can just start the service and define the device back there where we were talking about this. So, well, these are pretty, typical as well as critical services that makes the hypervisor really work. And there is security and users, so you can create users here directly in a hypervisor. If it's a small company, obviously you would be creating users in vCenter, or you can just get users from Active Directory. So acceptance level is partner. It is compatible to connect with any other vendor software that is allowed by VMware, or with any other vCenter as well. So if you go for authentication here, Active Directory enabled? No. Yes, we haven't enabled it yet. So we will be doing that once the vCenter is deployed. And smart card authentication, it's not available, but if it is, then the users who want to connect, they would have to put the smart card there in their laptops, and then they will be authenticated. Certificates, obviously, if you have purchased certificate for every hypervisor from any certificate authority like DigiCert, GoDaddy.com, or any other VeriSign. So in that case, you would just install that certificate here. When you're installing the certificate, you just have to make sure that the name, either you go for wildcard certificate, which is that you just put the domain name there, or you would go for the exact name there, that is SAN certificate, that is called, and subject alternative name, which means that you can just that certificate that you purchase will only be used. This name will be hard coded there on the certificate, and that certificate is just meant for this. If it's a wildcard, just the domain star.domain, then that certificate can be used with all hypervisors here who have the suffix of netplus.local. Suffix means the end part of the domain. And users, well, there's only one user, but you can create more users. And once you create the other users, suppose you want to go for company policy. Suppose there is a company policy that other than the root user, also create one more user, and just keep the password only with admins, top admins. So if in case something happens to the root, you can just log in from that other user as well with top privileges. So when you create a user, what roles you give to them? So if you go to the roles, these are the roles that you can give to any of the user there. Administrator anonymous, no access, no cryptography administrator, no trusted infrastructure administrator, read-only trusted infrastructure administrator, setup and monitoring of trusted infrastructure, and then view. So these are all the roles there that you can give to any user that you're creating up there. Lockdown mode would be, we're going to use that when we are joining these hypervisors to the vCenter, right? So in that case, we're going for the lockdown mode. But what is lockdown mode basically? So it would be, just one sec, guys. Yeah. So lockdown mode is that you can connect from Google Chrome, right? This client, web client that we call. You can connect from that, and you can also connect from the vCenter. Let me just draw this so you will be able to understand better. And lockdown mode, if we go for, so this is a hypervisor here, right? And H hypervisor, and what happens is that you can connect from a browser to it, and we are connected like that right now, or you can connect from the vCenter server appliance, VCSA, And then third way is connecting is directly connecting through DC UI, right? So this way also we connected in last class, and we configured IP and everything. So um, if you enable the lockdown mode, so this access will be gone, and only you can connect through VCSA and DCUI to a hypervisor, right? So there's a lockdown mode, normal, and then there's a strict lockdown mode. Two types of lockdown modes are there: normal lockdown mode and strict. So if you go for normal, you can't connect from browser, you can only connect from VCSA and DCUI. This is normally administrators do implement that as a security precaution. Otherwise, anyone can just get to the, if they know the root username password of the hypervisor, they can just use the browser from anywhere inside the company and connect to it. So it's crucial when you deploy the VCSA. Right after that, when you're joining the hypervisor to the VCSA, vCenter, you're telling the vCenter this is the hypervisor. So at that time, it asks you, do you want to enable the lockdown mode? So we're going to do that, and you're going to see that. But normal lockdown mode, no browser, but yes, vCenter and DCUI. Strict lockdown mode is no browser, no DCUI. You can only connect from VCSA, but you can create another account as well in case you are stuck with something happens to the VCSA and you're not able to connect from VCSA. Then there's another account which lockdown mode will allow you to connect from. Strict lockdown mode will allow you to connect from. So normal lockdown mode, only browser you cannot connect. Strict lockdown mode, you cannot connect from browser as well as DCUI. Directly even you cannot connect them. Normally administrators go for normal lockdown mode. So this is what we see here. Then we go to the monitor, and in the monitor you see here obviously the live metrics, if there's anything going on with the CPU. And then if you drop down here, memory, and if you drop down here, network, whatever the bandwidth is being used, and disk. So these are the four crucial components: hardware components, CPU, memory, network, disk. And you can just go for default colors. You want for last hour or for more times, and select VMs. You can, if there were virtual machines, then you can also select that which virtual machine is the main culprit in consuming all the CPU, memory, network, disk, and others are still looking for it. So then there is hardware, and obviously we're on this hypervisor is on top of a software. It's not directly installed on a hardware, so you won't see any sensors health. So sensors are deployed for the CPU, for hard disk, for all the other components of motherboard, and the hardware performance is also being checked here and reported here. IPMI capabilities, the system has no IPMI capabilities. You may need to install a driver to enable. Normally, suppose it's a HP or Dell or other servers. So those companies give their monitoring and management software as well. HP Director is that software, so you can remotely connect, and you can also add some extra monitoring capabilities. And then there is storage. It's supposed to detect the hardware storage if it was directly installed on a hardware, but it's not. So other than that, if we go for events, so whatever events are going on with timestamp, they are being added here. So we connected from root with Chrome, and it's detecting it as Mozilla. Really? You're kidding me? Anyway, so then DCUI is enabled, yes, and so all the events are there. And just like in Windows, you have event viewer. So here you can just check the events as well. Tasks, so refresh services and completed successfully. So whatever tasks were done, update options completed, and install date. So whatever tasks were going on in the background, although we just simply connected from root here. And log files. What are the path of the, so whatever the log files, what are the types of log files you want, vCenter agent log file. So this hypervisor is communicating with the vCenter through the VPXA agent. So the vCenter agent log files, the connectivity with vCenter all the information about that is in the log files that get created in the hypervisor. And then VMware Observer daemon log file, and it goes on with the VM kernel warning log files, and you can see all types of log files here for different Vmotion when you're doing the migration of virtual machine from one hypervisor to another. So the log files, if how many machines were migrated onto this hypervisor or away from this hypervisor, and it goes on and on and on. So all types of log files are there, which would be very important for you when you're investigating what's going on in case of any incident. And then finally the notifications here. So well, there are none, and if there were, you would just find them here. Now this is manage, this is monitor here, and other than that, we then see here virtual machines. Now these are obviously the main components here for this hypervisor that we need to know. Virtual machines, obviously you will create virtual machines here. In fact, we will be creating a virtual machine here, and we will be installing virtual machine here just to understand the working of a hypervisor if we do use it alone. And if we know all the major components, then it's easier to understand what's going on the hypervisor side when you're controlling them from the vCenter. So virtual machines, storage, and networking here. We're going to go for virtual machines here, and there's a create and register virtual machine. Now that is so what's the plan here? When we go for virtual machine, we're going to talk about when we create virtual machine, obviously it needs to have a storage and it needs to have networking as well. So when we create virtual machine, we're going to check all the options that virtual machine sees in terms of security, storage, networking, and all other, and we're going to try to talk about them. So the plan. What's the plan? And I may have mentioned that before. So connect to all hypervisors from the browser. This is done. Okay. Explore VM, storage, networking. Yep. So we are here, and create a VM with OS inside. So the plan is that we're going to create a virtual machine with OS inside. OS inside, how do we do that? Well, it's not as simple as as we create that in Windows. So what is the full plan? Let's just talk about it again, but I need a clearer diagram here. So I'll go for diagrams, and oh, okay. These are those diagrams where I used to go for Windows-based vCenter, and no longer is that the case. Did I create one? Okay, so I'll be creating now here. So we have this Windows machine. Then we have here the 3 hypervisors. It's good that VMware pushed us towards this. Normally, adoption to latest technology is always terribly slow. So that's Win01, and that's then ESXi01. I would need this diagram to explain all the features again and again, so I'll just make one basic diagram here. Now we have the ESXi123. Now these have obviously one physical disk, so one physical disk each, and we need to actually talk about data store, which gets created on top of the physical disk. Then they have one network card each. So that triangle, I'll just create 1, 1, 1. Okay, so what are these? Okay, this is phi disk. This the physical disk. So once I create that, I don't have to create that again and again, because I'll just copy this. And this is the phi NIC, so physical network card. Network interface card. And we're going to be adding actually 8 more, total 9 network cards, or 10, doesn't matter. But why that many? Well, I'll be explaining that. And so this is our just basic infrastructure right now. And also obviously we have still here Active Directory and DNS and DHCP. But this is just much we have. We haven't created the SAN storage yet, or our own software SAN. So I'll just grab this one now and put it in diagrams. Okay, and put it there as well. And let's go ahead. Now, what I was trying to explain here was that we're going to create a virtual machine. But now, when you have a hypervisor, so automatically what happens? When we installed hypervisor, what happened? There's one physical disk under that machine where we installed the hypervisor. We're pretending it's a physical machine. It was Vmware Workstation, right? And there's one physical NIC. So when the hypervisor gets installed, it is formatted. The disk is formatted with VMFS file system. So disk is formatted with VMFS file system, which is simply VMware file system. And second thing is that a data store gets created, which is a partition that gets created on top of that. Now that data store has nothing to do with databases. Database is something else, and data store is just the way it just configures the VMware hypervisor configures the disk. It's a partition you can create here. Data store 1. Now suppose this disk is 1 terabyte. You want to create one data store or one partition with 500 GB, and you want to create another data store with 500 GB. So data store 1, data store 2. You can create that, or you can just go 200 GB one data store and 200 or 5 data stores you can create. So a hard disk, physical disk gets created with VMFS partition file system, so VMware file system. If the physical disk is formatted with VMFS file system and a partition with data store, then what happens? So first of all, let me just create that data stores on top of all. So these are the data stores, and they're always called data store 1. So in all three you will find data store 1 for each hypervisor. So that gets created. Now what's the benefit of that? Benefit is that if you create a virtual machine on top of that, so suppose you go for a virtual machine on top of that, so that virtual machine will be able to first of all see a storage, to detect a storage. A VMware virtual machine can detect a storage if the storage is formatted with VMFS file system and data store created there. Suppose data store is not created, it's not formatted with VMFS file system, virtual machine cannot see this physical disk, right? So obviously, and if it is formatted with the VMFS file system, then virtual machine can use all the advanced features of fault tolerance and all HA and DRS, fault tolerance, and all the long list of features that you can use, all advanced features virtual machine can use if the physical disk is formatted with this structure. So when we create a virtual disk, normally what happens, and this is the virtual machine gets created, and the virtual disk sees a data store as a storage, and then it creates its virtual disk or vdisk here, right? Now obviously that's not a recommended configuration. We never create virtual machines virtual disk on a local physical disk based data store. We always use SAN storage or LUNs coming from SAN, which are logical unit number, or shared disks coming from SAN, on top of which we create virtual machine virtual disk. But this is just an example of that's how it would look like if we have a basic environment without SAN and local disks are being used here. So you get the idea. First of all, data stores are created by default. Right now they are there for each hypervisor. One physical disk, one data store, one partition. Data store 1 is created there, and they're all formatted with VMFS file system, VMware files. So other than that, when a hypervisor gets installed, another thing gets created automatically. And what is that? It's the virtual standard switch. So a virtual standard switch gets created here, right? And that virtual standard switch gets obviously all machines need to communicate with each other as well, right? So we're gonna call it VSS, virtual standard switch. Let me just VSS, virtual standard switch. And so, well, we'll start it here, we'll start switch here, right? So each hypervisor has a default virtual standard switch. We're going to spend 4 hours just on virtual standard switch later as well to explore what are the features inside. It's quite extensive. Then the distributed switch, which is the central switch controlling all the machines, networking. Now, what is standard switch having? So what is the first of all purpose of this? You can see that these virtual machines obviously will have its own virtual network card as well, right? And we can call them VNICs, virtual NICs, right? Those are physical NICs on physical machines here, and these are virtual NICs. So how do this whole thing work? Hypervisor gets installed, virtual standard switch automatically gets installed. The virtual machine, when it is created, through its network adapter, it's connected to a virtual standard switch. Now during the machine creation, it will ask you, hey, do you want this machine to be connected to a network? Obviously we do. And this virtual standard switch is already connected to a physical network card during the installation of this hypervisor. That happened automatically. What? When the hypervisor was installed, a virtual standard switch was created and it was connected to a physical network card. Why? Because obviously when virtual machines connect to the virtual standard switch, virtual machines will be able to communicate with outside world. So the data will go to the virtual NIC, through the virtual standard switch, to the physical network adapter, to the physical switch, Cisco switch or Juniper switch, whichever, and to the router and to outside internet, ISP, right? And now things to remember here. When hypervisor gets installed, a data store gets created automatically on the physical disk. Our virtual standard switch gets created automatically and connects to a physical NIC. So virtual machine, when you are about to create, the storage is ready for the virtual machine to be created, and the networking is ready for the virtual machine to use. Inside the virtual standard switch, now this is obviously just a virtual standard switch, but inside that, because you're about to see that that it's going to talk about port group. What? Port group. Okay, so there's a port group here. What does that do? Well, just like the physical switch has computer ports, the virtual standard switch also has a port group, which is simply a group of ports. Okay, if it's a group of ports, so how many ports are there? 128. So total, a port group that is already there, and the port group that has a capacity of 128 ports, which means that 128 virtual machines can connect to this port group. If you have that kind of hardware capacity, normally you would have if you have 1 terabyte RAM and like 16 core processor and terabytes of disks, so you can have now depends on the machine as well. Suppose all machines have database applications and have V, you might get 20, 30, 50 virtual machines maximum, right? Because they all need all kind of hardware here. So the thing is, maximum 128 virtual machines can connect to a port group, and you can create here 128 port groups within the virtual standard switch. So we're going to have labs on that. We're going to be creating port groups there. We're going to be creating virtual standard switches as well, 3-4 of those as well. So we're going to go into that. But right now, just to understand, when virtual standard switch gets installed, a port group, a default port group gets installed. And what is there a name for that? Yes, a port group named VM network port group gets installed. So the name of the port group is VM network. What's the purpose of that? The purpose is to let the virtual machine connect to the virtual standard switch. Oh, do we need a port group for that? Well, yes, and let's talk about that. Virtual machine does not see directly a virtual standard switch, and virtual machine does not see directly a physical NIC. It does not see these two guys. Okay, so how does it connect to the network and see what? It only sees a port group. Virtual machines, I'm going to show you where it's going to see that, but it does not see, oh, there's a virtual standard switch. I don't know. What is that? Virtual machine asks. I only know one thing in the network, and that is port group. Virtual machines can only see a port group, and port group in turn are connected to virtual standard switch. Virtual standard switch is connected to the physical network. So you're going to see that when we go inside the hypervisor. So just thing to understand is, okay, there's a VSS already created here by default when hypervisor gets installed. So it has a port group there. Its capacity is 128 ports there, and virtual machines only see a port group. It does not see a VSS. It does not see a physical NIC directly. It cannot connect to that directly, these two guys. It only connects to a port group. And you can create sales port group, you can create marketing port group, you can create admin department port group, and connect sales machines to sales port group. So you can create multiple port groups in a virtual standard switch. Again, we're going to be playing on with that in detail later when this networking topic comes. So this is just the structure. Now, if we talk about what virtual machine can see and what virtual machine cannot see in a hypervisor. So virtual machine can see, when we talk about storage, virtual machine can see a data store, yes. Virtual machine cannot see a physical disk. So that's a storage. There's a feature called RDMA, and we're gonna that's an exception, but other than that, virtual machine cannot see a physical disk directly. It can only see a data store on top of a physical disk. And that's the same thing. Virtual machine cannot see a VSS, virtual standard switch itself, and a physical NIC itself, but it can see a port group that is attached to a virtual standard switch, right? So that's what we need to understand also, what it can see and what it cannot see. And other than the virtual standard switch having a port group here, which the only purpose of port group is what? Well, actually there are two. First purpose is to connect virtual machines to the virtual standard switch. That's the purpose of port group. Just connect virtual machines. Okay. The other purpose is just to organize. Oh, well, it has extensive features inside. We're going to discuss that too. Main purpose is, I'm just saying, we're going to explore the port group as well, and it has a lot of features inside. But main purpose to connect virtual machines, yes, and the other purpose is to organize. Oh, organize how? So organize. As I said before, sales port group, marketing port group, sales virtual machines connect to sales port group, marketing virtual machines connect to marketing port group, and so on, right? So organization of virtual machines and connectivity of virtual machines, that's what the port group does. inside a virtual standard switch. And then there is another component inside virtual standard switch that you're about to see. And I hope you're not overwhelmed, because this is and still it's a kind of basic information, but once you have an idea about this, when we jump into only virtual standard switch, then you will be like already, oh yeah, okay, this is that. So there's another thing in port group called VM kernel port. VM kernel port. Oh, what is this? So port group connects virtual machines, organizes virtual machines, and does a lot of other things, but the main purposes are that what is VM kernel port? VM kernel port introduces configurations for advanced features. Now, what does that mean? Advanced features. Okay, Vmware port introduces networking configurations for advanced features. What? Okay, so what it means in English. So normally when I say in English, this means that I'm about to explain in simple words. So in English, what it means is that if you are about to introduce an advanced feature, high availability feature like fault tolerance, FT, fault tolerance, right? So fault tolerance does what? You have one virtual machine here and another one virtual machine here in 6i2 and another virtual machine here in 6i3. Okay, let me just quickly create that. So you have one virtual machine here and the other virtual machine here. So this would be the active virtual machine A, and this would be the passive virtual machine here, right? So the active virtual machine will receive all the data, and passive, it will copy everything up to the last second to the passive virtual machine with synchronous replication, right? So the thing is that if active goes down, passive becomes active, right? Okay, so how is it all possible? You have to configure, because it's all using network, right? Over the network, it needs to do that. Over the network, it needs to fail over the network, it's copying everything from active to passive. So the network configurations that are needed are arranged by a VM kernel port feature. So that's for FT, fault tolerance. Then there are obviously other features there as well, like HA. Actually, the VM kernel port is used by a feature called management network. I'm going to be introducing that too. Also fault tolerance and Vmotion, the migration feature. vSAN, very important, and FT. So these four major features. There are many others, third-party software that you can download and install, and it could use the VM kernel port. But VM kernel port introduces networking configurations for advanced features, which are fault tolerance, management network. I'm going to explain that. It's already there right now. Vmotion, vSAN. So we're going to be deploying fault tolerance related configurations. We're going to be deploying Vmotion. We're going to be deploying vSAN. So you're going to understand all that. That what is the part of VM kernel port here for implementation of these advanced features. But thing to understand right now is that another major component of virtual standard switch is VM kernel port, which when it comes to networking side of configurations for these advanced features, so we need to come to VM kernel port and configure the network configurations for these advanced redundancy features, migration and high availability features, right? So this is also a crucial component of virtual standard switch. So one crucial component, port groups. Second crucial component, VM kernel port. Port group basically connects virtual machines to each other and to the outside world. VM kernel port whenever you decide to introduce advanced features, their networking configurations are handled here with VM kernel port. And the port group and VM kernel port are both part of virtual standard switch, right? So that's an overall view of, we're about to create a virtual machine, but we just need to know that first of all, how is it working in the background. So when we are about to create a virtual machine, it's for the storage, you're going to see data store 1 there, and you would know that, okay, data store 1 means that we have access to a physical disk here, and we're going to select data store 1. Then when we go ahead with virtual machine, at one point you're going to see that we're using default port group that automatically got created when the hypervisor got installed. So that default port group is VM network port group that you will see now that the virtual machine will be connecting to, right? Virtual machine will be connecting to the VNIC of the virtual machine. So if we understand all this, that basically a hypervisor has arranged the default storage and default network connectivity already when it got installed. And these are some of the components that, or terminology, that we use for storage and networking. So what is our plan now? Let me just copy the whole thing. Oh, that's not in diagrams. Week 3 and okay. Yeah, so we need to do this task. Create a VM with OS inside. Oh, so what's the plan then? How do we get that OS? And for that I needed this drawing. So, well, first of all, the components were discussed. Now, what's the plan? Again. And I would need this diagram again here. Copy. And okay, so creating a VM and with OS inside. Now, is that a big deal? OS inside? Aren't we always gonna have virtual machine with OS inside? No, like we're gonna be creating a lot of virtual machines where we will not put an OS inside, right? And that is because we have some limited RAM and CPU. Even if it is 32 GB, you're gonna see the limitations of that reaching fast. Okay, so create a VM with OS inside. So what we're going to do is that we are already connected from Chrome here. So we have Chrome, and from there we are connected to ESXi1. So that and we already have that data store available here, right? So you know what? I have that basic diagram, and I should have taken another copy of that at that time when I had created the data store. And so you would see all components clearly whenever you see the diagram. You would see that basic components are these. Let me just quickly grab that because I'll be using this diagram a lot. Okay. And there is that VSS here that I'll quickly create for the basics. So we will understand right away what is what. And that's VSS, Virtual Standard Switch. And they're connected to their physical link. Now this diagram I would always need, and it will be good for you to have a clear picture right away. put it here as well. Okay, so let's continue, and now quickly we go to the first lab. Well, it's all lab, continuous lab. So from Chrome, we're connecting to this. So we're going to be creating a virtual machine here, and that virtual machine we're about to create. So this would be obviously a local virtual machine, so its virtual disk will be residing. We haven't yet configured the SAN. We will be, but for now we're going to create a virtual machine here. But how do we get that operating system there? So this virtual machine needs, first of all, it sees the data store there, right? Not only that it sees it for putting its own files and virtual disk here, but it also sees it as a file server. If there are any files that needs to be attached to the virtual machine, those files also need to be stored in data store, right? So that's why the plan is, since we are connected from Windows to E6i1, we need to get from our laptops or desktops Windows operating system copied here first. So ISO Win 2016 ISO or 2012. Well, we have 2016 ISO that we need to copy from there to here, and then it needs to be copied inside the data store 1. So first we're going to grab this and copy it in the downloads folder of Windows 1 from our physical desktops, and then we're going to upload through Chrome because we're connected through Chrome to this E6i, the web client. So through web client, we're going to just simply put that ISO here. So that ISO is actually going to be inside this data store. So if this ISO is placed inside the data store, then virtual machine will be able to see it, and we can attach that ISO to the virtual machine. And then when we restart inside a hypervisor, so it will start the installation. So it's not that straightforward how it really works. So when we start implementing it, then it gets a bit tricky. Although this is just a simple plan of copy pasting the ISO from outside of your Win01 to inside downloads folder, and from there uploading through web client inside Chrome to the data store. So let's do that, and then basically what we need to do is to create a virtual machine with an operating system. And just to explain the whole process of, okay, creating a virtual machine, no big deal, but if you want to install an operating system as well, where do you put it really? How does it really see that operating system? And then when it is installed, so how do we connect to this virtual machine from within the ESXi hypervisor environment? So let's do that. So the first step would be to get the ISO from outside your physical desktop or laptop to inside the Win01. So I'm going to be doing that first step. And by this time I'm kicked out already from E6i, so I'll kick myself in once we are done. So this is the Vmware Workstation. I need to still go outside of Vmware Workstation to grab that ISO. So I'm going to minimize this, and I'll go to the physical desktop and go to D drive, well, wherever my ISO is. And so I see here 2016. Yeah, there's a 2016. Okay, you know what, this is the 2018 version, and in my laptop I have much newer. It's not a big one, so I'll just grab it from there and copy it in my desktop. This is 2021. So 2021 version, when I downloaded it in 2021, so obviously it will have all the latest updates there. And this is 2018 in my, so I have other desktop from which I'm connected with my laptop. My desktop has more, copy and replace. I have 2021 version, that's just the client version. So let me just check it out. Modified. It says I have it, but it's the same name, yeah, but it is downloaded in 2018. Let me just copy that fast. Copy and replace. Okay, it's supposed to not take a lot of time. So once we copy that, I'll just put it there. In week 3, here we am with OS inside. So copy ISO of Win 2016 to Win01 machine VM, and then through Chrome web client upload this ISO to ESXi01 data store, and then create a VM and attach this ISO to the VM from data store, and start VM and go through the installation of 2016. Once done, so what we need to also check is, once done, then give last password to it and log in. So install Vmware Tools. This is a crucial thing for a virtual machine, but also check if this VM got IP from our DHCP in a Win01 VM. So if I go back to the diagram, so this virtual machine that we're about to create inside ESXi1, it needs to grab an IP from the DHCP that is in Win01. How? Like, obviously, DHCP, so when this machine is created, it's going to be connected to the VSS, right? So it will request, as soon as it loads, it will request through VSS to the physical network card, through the VMware network, to the physical network card, and then to the DHCP. So when we install virtual machine, this virtual machine should get an IP from DHCP through the hypervisor networking. So this is also going to be confirmed that our networking is okay or not right now. And ESXi virtual machine inside ESXi hypervisor is communicating with all the infrastructure services in another machine outside of hypervisor. Okay, so if we go back here, so the copy ISO, I'll just check it out again. 30 seconds remaining. Oh, 9 minutes and 30 seconds. Are you kidding me? Why am I using the latest version then? Well, sometimes it's better. Well, that's gonna take forever. It's not that fast. You know what? It's not a big deal. I'll just cancel out. I'll just connect this 2016 here. You know what? If I just let it happen in the background, don't copy and then use. No, I can't. So I'll just use this one. I'll copy this 2016 and paste it in my Win01 downloads, paste. So it's within the desktop. It is going from the desktop to the virtual machine. If Vmware tools are installed in a virtual machine, then only you can copy. Okay, so that itself is taking time. Okay, now it's done. So 2016 is first added here, and if we go to the diagram, it is not this one. So it's here now. So from here through the web client, we need to upload it inside the data store. So we're going to be connecting to data store. We will create a folder inside data store called software. Inside this data store folder, software folder, we're going to upload this ISO to the data store so virtual machine can see it. So I'm going to go back to this, and now I need to log in from this to the E6i1. So we're going to use the data store 1 of E6i1 root, and the password small Pixie Capabilities shape 1 to 3 without shape 1 to 3. Log in. We're logged in. Now virtual machine side, obviously there's no virtual machine yet, but in the storage side, if we go, there is data store 1 as we discussed, right? So I want to copy that file to this data store. So we are sitting in Win01 while we are remotely connected to ESXi1. So here, either you can go to data store browser, or you can click data store on top of it, and then this particular data store, you can go to the data store browser. Once you go to the data store browser, that's how it looks like. And I need to create a directory here, right? So I'm going to click that directory, and I can just call it software, and then click create directory, right? So software directory is created. I'll select the software, and then there's a upload button here. So upload that ISO from our local downloads folder to this data store 1 in ESXi1, right? So I'm going to click that upload. When I go to downloads, yes, this is where it got copied, and I'll double click that, and it shows on the right side 1 files, and then it starts uploading here. That takes time. So it has gone 2%, 3%. Okay, so that's taking time.
Want to take a break now instead of 5 o'clock?
Yeah, we can take a break now as well. So, okay, 4:30, 40, 50. So let's connect at 4:50 Canada and 3:50 US. Alright, so, oh man, that was all recording. Seriously, did I not pause it? Okay, so we'll continue, and I'll check it out if yeah, the Windows is actually, the ISO is there and it's 6.49 GB, so I'll just simply close it now. So if we check, if we just see it in the diagram, so first we copied it here, then we copied it inside the data store. Now we're going to create a virtual machine and we're going to attach this to the VM. So VM will only be able to see that if it's inside the data store where we just uploaded now with a web client. So I'll just go back here and I'll close this because it's there already in the software folder. And we're back in the web client. I'll just refresh that if it has not already kicked me out because of idle. No, it's okay. So we have data store. We've gone to the data store and we're good. I'll just collapse the data store. I'm going to go inside the virtual machine and I'll just try to create that virtual machine. Now before I create that virtual machine, since we talked about the networking as well, and in the networking you can see that there is VM network here, which is actually a port group. So we were talking about that, and the first standard switch that gets created is normally called vSwitch0. So I was saying in that diagram that there are so first data store that gets created in each hypervisor automatically is called data store 1. So vSwitch0 is the name for the standard switch that gets created automatically as well. So if we go back here, vSwitch0, and you have VM network, which is the port group, and the purpose of a port group is to connect virtual machines to each other and to the outside world. And there is a management network. Now you may recall that management network is a functionality that is configured by VM kernel port. So one default port group that gets created is VM network. One default VM kernel port that gets created is management network. So what is the purpose of all this and how is it an advanced feature? Because it says here VM kernel port introduces networking configurations for advanced features. So, and then FTE, management network, Vmotion, vSAN are there. So management network is VM is configured with the help of VM kernel port. What is it doing? What is management network really doing? Management network is a feature installed already in every hypervisor. The only purpose is that if we want to remotely connect to a hypervisor, we have to connect. We are connecting to a hypervisor and managing the hypervisor remotely thanks to management network feature. If that feature is not there, then we cannot remotely connect and manage the hypervisor. So, and that is configured by VM kernel port. So that's an advanced feature that is already configured by VM kernel port, and because of this we are able to remotely connect to any hypervisor here and can manage any hypervisor. Either we connect one by one, or when we install finally the VCSA, so through VCSA we're going to be connecting to pretty much all the hypervisors, and maybe it's a big environment and you have 1000 hypervisors instead of just 3 hypervisors. So those 1000 hypervisors are remotely we can connect to them because of the management network VM kernel port. So if we go back to this diagram here, so this is the management network feature or VM kernel port that is added there, and there's a VM network which is a port group, right? So it does say that this is standard port group, but when we do create VM kernel ports, VM kernel adapters, VM kernel NICs. So you're going to see that one of the name of the advanced features that it configures is management network as well. So the purpose is to remotely connect and manage hypervisors. For this is created, and the purpose of VM network, as we already know, to connect virtual machines to each other and to outside world. Since we're in the networking, there is virtual switches, and vSwitch0 is the virtual switch that gets created by default. Physical NIC, we have just one physical NIC here, and that is VMNIC0. It is called VMNIC0. VM kernel NICs, that is VM kernel network adapter that has this management network created there as a port group. Normally, when we go in depth with port groups, then I'm gonna show you again what a normal port group really does, and then what VM kernel port really does. Tcp Stacks, this is just the protocols that are provided, that are supported by VMware, and firewall rules. If you want to block any traffic on the firewall, then you can just, it's not just traffic, whatever ports are there that needs to be started or not started, then you can come to firewall rules here on hypervisor level. So this is networking. The storage, in fact, in the storage there's data stores. Data store 1 is showing, we talked about that. We can create more data stores if we have more physical disks there. Also there's adapters. Now these are the adapters that help the remote storage get connected. So suppose you connect through SAN, iSCSI, so there's an iSCSI controller here. Then it also is compatible with these motherboards and IDE controllers there. Other than that, there is rescan. Oh, there's that adapters, and there's a software iSCSI. The only purpose of software iSCSI is if we're going to be using that, but once we install the VCSA, so it will be useful for that purpose. But software iSCSI is that adapter, is that link, is that feature which helps us connect SAN, which we're about to install. So it will help us connect share disks over the network to the hypervisor. When we do that, obviously, then I'm going to create a diagram for that too. Devices, and so in the devices, in storage, we're talking about, we have the CD-ROM, the virtual CD-ROM, right? And then we have a local virtual disk as well. So there's a CD-ROM, there's a disk SSD, and persistent memory. So that's just in the persistent memory that is available or made available for the storage as well, in the form of swap file as well. So that's what it's showing here, and since we did not configure anything here, it's not showing anything. So data stores are, we can create multiple data stores here as well if we have multiple disks, but right now let's go back to what we were about to do, and that is virtual machines. So I'm going to go to virtual machines and click the create register VM. I'm going to click that create register VM, and there we're going to go for create a new virtual machine, deploy a virtual machine from an OVF or OVA file, and then there's a register an existing virtual machine. So create a virtual machine, pretty simple. But what is this? Deploy a virtual machine from an OVF or OVA file. So open virtualization format and open virtualization appliance. The main purpose of OVF or OVA is to import or export virtual machines from this hypervisor outside to a physical machine, or from vCenter you want to export, and then when you want to import that virtual machine, then you can import from outside to a vCenter or to a hypervisor. So if the virtual machine needs to be exported, it then goes with OVF and or OVA formats to import and export the virtual machine, right? And register virtual machine, this option guides you through registering a virtual machine that already exists on a data store. Suppose you copied a virtual machine to a data store and you want to register it with the hypervisor as well. Hypervisor gives an ID, unique ID to the virtual machine as well. So we're going to go to the top here, and there's a create a new virtual machine. When we select that, let's click next. And then we just simply create a virtual machine. So we can just name it VM01. And compatibility. So if we go for compatibility, so you can see all the previous versions of hypervisors. And this is update 1, then there is 7.0, 7.0 update 1, 7.0, and then there is Workstation 15 virtual machine, 6. So which virtual machine you want to create when you're creating this? Suppose I go for 5.0. Why would I even want to go for that? Suppose we have another hypervisor in our environment that is 5.0, and if we create a virtual machine here, so we will be able to Vmotion this virtual machine to an older hypervisor as well. So in that case, this is all backward compatibility, and you can see all the versions here: 6.7 update 2, 6.7 virtual machine, 6.5 VMware Workstation 12. You want to run this virtual machine from a production environment to a VMware Workstation, so it is compatible. It can be made compatible with that too. 6.0, 5.5, 5.1, 5.0, and 4.x. So that's a lot of additions for backward compatibility, but we're just going to stick with our, I think it was on this, or I think it was on this one, UI. So update 1, and then go guest OS family. So I have Windows there with Windows Server 2016 ISO ready to be deployed. So I'll just go for Windows, and then go for Windows Server 2016 here. So I'll check it out. Where is 2016? If I go further down, there it is, 2016. It does show 2019 there as well. Enable Windows virtualization based security. So all the security that you want makes hardware virtualization, IO, MMU, EFI, and secure boot available to the guest OS. You must also enable virtualization based security within the guest OS of this virtual machine. If you want to have security provided by the hypervisor to the guest operating system inside the virtual machine as well, so you can do that. And well, for now we can, we're gonna have this virtual machine, so I'm just gonna select that and click next. Now you can see that this virtual machine can see an underlying storage in the form of data store 1 and the size of this. So that's good. And capacity is 70 GB. How come? So the disk capacity is 70 GB. Really? E6i1. If I go to settings, was it not 200 GB? It is 200 GB. There's only one disk there and 200 GB. So when I go to VM01, select the data store for the virtual machines, configuration files, and that's strange. Well, it's more than, it's still, yeah.
Yeah, I would do the same, 71.75 GB, exact numbers.
You also have that?
Yep.
Okay. Why? I'm going to cancel out from here and go to data store and monitor storage. 70 GB? You're kidding me. Oh, that says 200 GB here. And how come? Okay, more storage. If I go, well, that's it. So if I go to data store, no, it doesn't say, but use capacity, refresh actions. This is very strange that it shows only 70 GB to be used while it actually has a 200 GB capacity here. Well, I'm in storage and I selected this disk, and this disk is EFI system 4GB, 4GB, 119 GB VMFSL. So it actually shows me 119 GB here, and that is VMFSL. Oh, okay. You know what? if that virtual machine we selected security options, then it divided the security options into this. It could be that I'm just gonna start this wizard again, and I'm not gonna select that security options there to check it out. So I'm just gonna go for create a new virtual machine again, click next, and VM01 OS family Windows 2016. I'll go down here. I'm not gonna select this virtualization based security, and next. Oh, it's still 70 GB. That's not good. Now I can do the second thing is if I select that disk, I'm back to storage, and if I select that disk here, there's an increase capacity here as well. I selected that increase capacity and extend to existing VMFS data store, expand existing VMFS data store extent. So increase the size of an existing data store by adding a new extent on another disk. That's not another disk. We don't have another disk, right? We have just one disk. Increase the size of an existing data store by growing an existing extent into adjacent free space. Well, if I select this and go ahead, does it let me know? Select the data store for which you want to increase space. Okay, this is the data store I want to increase space. If I click next here, no, so that it's just looking for another device to connect. That's strange. I'll quickly connect to ESXi2 or 3, okay, whichever, and just simply quickly check it out. There is that. Otherwise I'll restart that hypervisor. Why it's not giving the full capacity. I'm connected to ESXi3 as well. I'm going to storage. It detects 71 GB capacity. It also detects here, while if I go to ESXi3 here, settings, it's 200 GB showing here. So why? And actions, restore, rename, increase capacity, unmount, delete, browse, refresh, restore permissions. It's not supposed to really. So free space is 70 GB, and it might show this as thin provision. It used to not show that with 6.7, and the operating system actually will take only 8 to 10 GB. So well, what we can do is we can carry on and check it as well. I'm just gonna put see in the documentation if this version is having some preview features for storage. If not, we'll simply still continue. 4GB, 119.72. So VMFS is this, and VMFS. What I see here is that VMFS is just that 72 GB that is available, or this is what is made available for us, and the rest is all EFSI. So when we go for VMFSL, I'll just put it on it. Update 1, they have done this, but there is update 2 and update 3 as well, if in case that is something that was again update 1 that was improved in other versions. So VMFSL, partition taking 50% of disk space. So I'll just go for this right away. Is it update 1 or is it update 2 as well? So we've reviewed and changed. This is a VMware blog itself. Layout of ESXi system storage partitions on its boot device. This is done to be more flexible and to support other VMware and third-party solutions. Prior to 7, ESXi system storage layout had several limitations. The partition sizes were fixed and the partition numbers were static. And this is why we changed the ESXi system storage partition layout. Okay, so they say that it is a change in 7, but I was not able to go for update 2 there, and otherwise we would have used that. It was at that time not available, but I will try to get the new one. Right now we can just go ahead with the new, this 70 GB, and then if we needed more disks, then we can go for more disks as well. So I'm just gonna copy this in OneNote, and then we can have a read on that as well. Just go for, so changes in the storage, right? Okay, let's continue with this because that's going to take some time as well to deploy that. Then we can try to reclaim that after I go to the documentation, or if we had to simply update it with update version 2. So we're going to do that. Now, virtual machine, I'll just continue. I'll click the create once again. I'm connected to E6I1. Okay, create new virtual machine, next, and VM01. So 0 update 1. So I asked the same drill. 2016. I'll skip this security because we can enable it later as well. Next, data store 1. Okay, and next. The disk size specified is greater than the amount available in the data store. You cannot commit disk space when using a thick provision disk. You must increase the data store capacity. So what it is saying is that thick provision disk cannot be used. We're not planning to use thick provision, so we're checking it out. Obviously we're going to just change this. In fact, we can go down here, and first of all you can see that it's 90 GB by default written here. And we don't plan to use thick provision, but we're going to talk about what is lazily zeroed and what is eagerly zeroed. But first of all, it's thin provision we're putting here, and that should just remove that error. I'm just going to close this error screen on top. Thin provision, right? We're going to come down to this now one by one. What are those features? I'll make this page full screen. Okay, so first of all, if you want to directly add a disk here, you can just add hard disk. You want to add a network adapter, you can do that too, and add other devices. Then second, CPU minimum 2 is given there, but this CPU is for virtual machine. And if you see that arrow there, so there's cores per socket that you want to use. CPU hot plug, which is that the virtual machine is started and you want to give more CPU, you want to assign more CPU there. And then there is reservation, that is so now what is reservation, limit, and shares? We're going to talk about that resource pools there, and once those resource pools are mentioned, like when we discuss about that, then we're going to talk about reservation. What is reservation, limit, and shares? But right now what we can see is that the machine has been given two CPUs, virtual CPUs, that is, which is okay, because this is a Windows 2016 server operating system, and the rest of the features we're going to be discussing as the course progresses, because those need to be discussed with diagrams separately. So then memory 4 GB. Now another thing that we wanted to check is the size of our RAM that we've given to the hypervisor. If I just go to my ESXi in which we are doing this right now, we're creating a virtual machine. If I go to ESXi1, so it's 4 GB RAM. Now that's not enough for Windows 2016 to properly install. What actually happens is, if you give less RAM, a very annoying thing that happens is that you the mouse drivers does not load, and then some of the features are actually acting weird because of very less memory available for the actual virtual machine. So when the total memory of the hypervisor is 4 GB, it's not really good to have 2 GB given to a Windows 2016. During the installation, it might give you some issues. So now well, at the planning stage, we should have just shut down the SXI and should have increased its memory. But then there are other SXI hypervisors here as well, like 4 GB, 4 GB, 4 GB. So 12 GB total, and this is 2 GB already, Win01. So my physical machine has 24 GB, and your machines have 32 GB. So we can give this E6i only 8 GB, and I will totally be using 16, 17, 18 GB total out of 24. So I'll be good. So what I can do is I can keep these SXI2 and SXI3 started, and I'll just take down this SXI1, which means I'll shut down the SXI1. So obviously all this will be disrupted, and we can start over the virtual machine process. Why are we shutting down? Because we can increase the RAM to 8 GB. Why? Because we need to give 4 GB here to the virtual machine. Otherwise, it's going to be painful installing operating system on this virtual machine, and it's going to take a long time. But the thing is, it might act weird as well if it has very less memory. So what I'm going to do is I want to shut down the E6i so I could increase its memory to 8 GB, so I could get 4 GB to this machine as well. So from Vmware Workstation, I can just right click here and go to shutdown and do this shutdown guest. But what if this hypervisor was installed directly on a physical server and you needed to shut it down? So there is that F12 shutdown restart here as well. We can go this way as well. If I click on top of the screen directly on E6i1 on the TCUI, and I go from my laptop FN and F12, then it asks for password, which I give. Then it says that forcefully terminate running VMs, if any. Well, yeah, we were in the process of, we can just close this process, cancel, and come back here and forcefully terminate. Now, well, there is no virtual machine to forcefully terminate running VMs, so we don't need to select that. But the option is shutdown or restart. So I'm going to select shutdown by pressing F2 key on my keyboard. F2. So it's shutting down. And once it is shut down, so I'll just put my desk up because I want it to stand. Okay, so I'm just gonna quickly change the RAM. 8 GB, yeah, if you have much more RAM, you can give it 16 GB as well. So I'm gonna give 8 GB and simply, and yeah, see this 200 GB is there. Okay, 8 GB, press OK, and power on. So if I go back, so well, obviously it has to be fully started, and then we can go for okay, so it's going to Okay, Win01. So now it's started with more RAM, so I'm gonna start that wizard again. This time we can just even go faster. Create a new virtual machine. Next. Oh, okay. I'll click cancel and refresh this guy as well, because I need to actually log in, because I restarted that machine, so we were disconnected. And small ABC, capital ABC, show 123, large show 123, enter, and create new virtual machine. Next, VM01 and Windows 2016. Next again, and we will need to give thin provisioned, but now 4 GB RAM is okay. I'm gonna expand that, so let me just make it full screen here, so we can talk more about it. And so memory, when we expand that, so just 4 GB reservation limit and shares again, and memory hard plug. So memory hard plug, obviously if you enable that, so while the virtual machine is started, you can just change the RAM of this virtual machine, not the hypervisor. Hypervisor, when you change the RAM, you have to shut it down, right? But for the machine, you can actually do that if it is enabled while the machine is started. So this is resource pool again. This is a topic of resource pool reservation limit and shares. We're going to talk about when we are on that topic. I'll just collapse that. Then there is hard disk, and it's 90 GB by default given here. Thin provision, you can give it here 1 terabyte, while actual physical disk is 70 GB. So it's gonna grow up to this, but obviously we can just give what we have available. I'll just put it 70 GB here, still thin provisioned. Then location, so this virtual machine folder will be created inside the data store. Remember that we created a software folder inside the data store one as well. So now virtual machine is being created, so virtual machines folder with all virtual machines files inside will be created on data store, which is a local disk based data store now. So virtual machines normally are not recommended to be created on local disk based data stores. They should be created on LAN based data store or shared disks based data stores. Now, what is disk provisioning? Thin provisioned and thick provisioned. We may have talked about thin provision and thick provision already, but when we talk about that, so thin provision, obviously it's not going to occupy all the space on the physical disk. It will only occupy this much space on the physical disk that the software is taking. So our software is Windows Server 2016. That takes 8 to 12 GB space here. So it's going to take only in thin provision only that much space. So thick provisioned, then there is lazily zeroed, and then there is thick provisioned, eagerly zeroed. So when we say zero means format, right? So you're formatting the disk to be used by the data, by the software. So lazily zeroed just means a thick provision, first of all, just occupies the whole disk space. So suppose whatever you put here, it needs that space free now to occupy on that much space on the physical disk. It needs that much space available on the physical disk. Thin provision doesn't need that. So, but it can make this disk formatted to be used slowly as the software gets installed. Suppose you install Windows, so it's 12 GB. So it's going to format only 12 GB of that while occupying still 70 GB of that space. Then you install MS Office, you install Photoshop software or AutoCAD software. So that software takes more, 40 GB or 30 GB more. So it's going to slowly format the disk and put the software there, or it's going to format all the disk. Whether it uses all 70 GB right away, it's going to just simply format that, and the software, when you put the software files on the file system will spread across 70 GB, while here whatever disk space is available for the software or made available through formatting, only that much disk space will be used here. So the main thing is that when you install a software, suppose this is a disk here, the files are spread across different sectors of the disk, and so if the disk is fully formatted and it's a big space there, so they spread a bit further. So this means that when the software is started and the files are retrieved across the file system, so that would take comparatively a bit slower software to start, and it will be a bit faster because lesser disk is available to spread the software files on. So it's just for if it's a big software, you have a lot of users using it, then you go for eagerly zeroed. If it's not the comparatively big software, you can go for lazily zeroed, which is a bit faster. So but we're gonna stick to thin provisioned, and well, it also shows shares.
What's the industry best practice?
Industry best practice is go for, well, as I said, that if it's bigger software, like, okay, databases are inside the virtual machines and they're going to be extensively used, so go for eagerly zeroed. Otherwise, if it's a virtual machine with file servers or print servers, that's not going to expand fast. We're not expecting a lot of software being deployed, and IOPS not being used that much, so go for lazily zeroed. So depend on the extensive application.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so here, disk provisioning, and then if I go down here, so SCSI controller 0 and SATA controller 0. So SCSI controller, obviously, if you have connectivity with the SAN storage, or you have just SCSI controller basically available in your physical servers, and you have a lot of disks connected to the SCSI controller, then it's going to detect that. Normally there is not much we can do. It just asks that, hey, well, which type of SCSI controller you have in underlying, and SCSI bus sharing. This is again just checking that what kind of configurations the vendor of the, suppose it's Dell or suppose it is HP, what kind of SCSI controller you have, and then check the VMware configurations or recommendations for that. So, but normally we are not supposed to really touch that unless we have some specific circumstances there. Paravirtual is normally used. It's also used in networking as well, where you have legacy applications and legacy data being installed. So the underlying controller would also be paravirtual. Otherwise, whatever type of controllers, disk controllers you have inside the hardware, you can just select those here. Normally a hypervisor virtual machine through the hypervisor detects that automatically. SATA controller 0 or USB controller 1, normally it's just there, SATA controller. If obviously we will have SSD SATA disks there, so it's going to detect those underlying in the hardware as well, and let those buses on the motherboard be used for this virtual machine. USB controller 1, it's supporting latest one 3.0 as well. If you want to connect USB to a virtual machine, how do you connect USB to a virtual machine? You just select the virtual machine, and whatever USB is connected physically on the hypervisor physical server, it gets detected here as well in the virtual machine. Network adapter, VM network. So when you see network adapter, it's virtual machine that we're about to create. This network adapter is this virtual machine's network adapter, obviously, so it has to connect to the hypervisor's virtual standard switch, and that virtual standard switch has a port group called VM network. So the virtual machine's network adapter is connecting to the hypervisor's virtual switch 0's port group called VM network. So if I select that, that's the only port group that I see here. So I don't see vSwitch 0 written here. I don't see a physical network card showing here. I only see a port group seen here. So a virtual machine sees a port group. It does not see a virtual switch 0, and it does not see network card. It just sees a port group. So this is what we are connecting to, and that's our default port group that is available in the default vSwitch 0. CD-ROM, if I expand that network, so then it goes down to status. Connected power on, obviously we need to do that. Adapter type is E1000. You want to have more pass-through, more bandwidth related or available. SR-IOV is normally redundancy. It provides redundancy for multiple storage paths you have from SAN. One path goes down for storage from here to SAN, then it can switch to the other path to keep the virtual machine connected to SAN. And VMXNet3 as well for legacy kind of networks. Now, when we say legacy, it's also you may have deployed software over the Pixie boot network. So what is that? If you select that VMXNet3, so it also supports then Pixie Booting, which means that virtual machine can boot from the network. Suppose it's an empty virtual machine and you want to deploy an operating system from over the network. Now, if it's an empty virtual machine and you start it, so it's going to boot from the network card, and there's that Pixie is code that is inside the network card. That its only responsibility is that if the empty virtual machine starts, it connects it to the local DHCP and get an IP address. Once the empty virtual machine has an IP address, then any software deployment tool like SCCM or WDS, I'm talking about both Windows deployment tools. From there, you can just deploy operating system over the network to the empty virtual machine or empty physical machine as well. But we're going to stick to E1000E. And MAC address, you can see that MAC address is 00000. Okay. I've been listening to the lecture, but my virtual PC from microtrain failed, so I had to spend class recreating the environment. I did get it done. Oh, good. Joseph says on the chat, but I am slightly behind. I can't get it to create a data store. I get this error. Failed to create VMS. Oh no. Joseph, we are using a default data store. We did not create a data store. Cannot change the host name configuration. Can you assess when the lecture is over? Yeah, I can re-listen to the lecture and complete. Yeah, so, okay, you got it then. So we just used the local data store and we didn't create a new one. Okay, so here, what we were talking about is that MAC address, and you can see the MAC address is 0000. MAC address is supposed to be the physical address of the network adapter, and it's supposed to be some alphanumeric characters there, right? But what happens is that each hypervisor is given a range of MAC addresses that it can assign to any virtual machine with a network card. Suppose this virtual machine has 2, 3, 5, 4 network cards even. So MAC address normally is assigned to, and it's a long range of MAC addresses that is given to each hypervisor. So it assigns that to a network card. There is that CD drive here, and that's where we need to make a change here. So it's a host device CD DVD drive, and in the host device, now what is it saying? Hey, do we have a media or the DVD with the Windows Server 2016 ISO, suppose, inside, and do you want to connect to that? So either you can connect to the physical server's DVD-ROM and grab the media from their host device, or you can grab that ISO file from the data store if you put it on data store. So we did the second one. We put the ISO file on a data store. So I'm going to select that ISO. As soon as I select the ISO from data store, it just takes us exactly there where we create a software folder and we put that file. So I'm just going to click that software, and there is that ISO file. So that's why we had to go to the data store and create a separate folder and then upload that file, and we took a break there as well. So once we select that, once we select that, just go ahead and click the select again. So this virtual machine now has been attached with the ISO, which was living inside the data store. And then video card here, display settings, default settings here, obviously we would need, but if we go down here, number of displays, total video memory, and 3D graphics, it doesn't detect that, so none of those options are there. Also in CD DVD, it's showing controller location, SATA controller 0, SATA 00. So where is that data store located? It's on top of the first disk that is there, right? So that's what the details are for CD DVD. Now we have talked about these details here, but then there is VM options here as well. If we go to VM options, then there is VMware remote console options, and so lock the guest operating system when the last remote user disconnects. What is that? So when the last user disconnects from this virtual machine, then lock the guest operating system, which means that nobody else can later use this. And then there are some more functionalities here, guest OS log and maximum number of sessions. So you can also restrict that, how many people can connect to this virtual machines remotely, and limit the number of simultaneous connections to this virtual machine. So that's a pretty cool feature, and not a lot of users will be able to connect then to this virtual machine. VMware Tools here, and that is obviously power operations. So VMware Tools will provide, now first of all, VMware Tools are a must for any virtual machine that you deploy, and they not only install user-friendly features inside, they also install like your graphical adapter extended drivers, but also enable a lot of advanced features in the virtual machine as well. So VMware Tools are a must. And run VMware Tools scripts after powering on, after resuming, before suspending, before shutting down guest, all are selected. And so power operations, if you press stop, it's going to be stopping the system. If you pause, the machine is on standby. If you click power play, so it's going to resume or power on, and then this icon will do this. So what will these icons do? That's what you're deciding here. And if we go further down, tool upgrades, check and upgrade VMware Tools before each power on. So, well, I can select that yeah, please check if there's an upgrade to VMware Tools, and if there is, then deploy that. But it's a production virtual machine, right? Suppose and it's Windows 2016, but there is a very critical application on top of that, so you cannot have any update or upgrade installed without testing it in the test environment. You can't just automatically let VMware upgrade any of your tools. What if it breaks your application? Then what? So never blindly install any updates on production applications. So I'll uncheck that. And time synchronize guest with host. Well, this virtual machine will correct its time with the host time, which is the host is what? Your Hypervisor 7.0 update 1. So whatever hypervisor is, hypervisor also called host. Power management, expand for power management settings, and power management is put the guest OS into standby mode and leave the virtual machine powered on. How should the virtual machine respond when the guest OS is placed on standby? So that's just default. Obviously, when you click standby, it should go to standby. So that's good. And Wake on LAN, if you want to configure that, but it's not really supported right now. And boot options. So how do you want to boot, and whether or not enable UEFI secure boot for this VM. So UEFI is obviously the next version, advanced version of BIOS, And secure boot just means that all the files that are used to start an operating system should be protected from any kind of hacker modifications. So secure boot just protects the starting files. Boot delay, you want to actually delay the boot, then you can just put more milliseconds here, 10 milliseconds. It just says, okay, I tried and all 3 of my 6i servers don't see any local storage. Okay, then okay, so we may need to check it at after the class then, why they're not seeing local storage. That's strange. Local storage means well, okay, I'm in the middle of this, so I guess yeah, we'll check it at the end of the class. Okay, so boot delay here, and then forced BIOS setup. Now this is interesting, that if you want to start this machine and you want the first time for it to go to the BIOS, maybe you want to change the boot sequence or anything you want to do in the BIOS, so then it will go to the BIOS directly the next time it boots if you select this option. Failed boot recovery, when virtual machine fails to find a boot device, automatically retry boot after 10 seconds. So it's gonna just try to start again and again if it does not find any device to start from. And then comes the advanced option, expand for so it is disable acceleration, enable logging, and acceleration just to use more local hardware resources, but it also then takes away those hardware resources like CPU and RAM from the other machines. So for the VIP machines we can enable that, and logging and debugging are available. Swap file location would be on a local disk, obviously, unless you want to change it somewhere else. Configuration parameters, and obviously the name says advanced options, so there are some extra configuration parameters that you want to go for. Then if I click the edit configuration parameters and click the add parameters, so then you can just try to put some parameters. So what are the parameters? You have to go for VMware documentation and try to check that what parameters you can put there. And I'll cancel that here. Fiber optic, so fiber channel, NPIV. So this is the WWN numbers there. So if you are connecting this to a LAN, to a shared storage coming from SAN, HP, 3-bar SAN, or some other SAN, then you can just put those numbers here. But yes, the hypervisor can directly be connected to the SAN disks or LANs. And then VBS, or virtualization based security. So that is what we saw before as well, that makes hardware virtualization, IOMMU, EFI, and secure boot available to the guest OS. You must also enable virtualization based security within the guest OS of this virtual machine. So it again says that, hey, you want to secure this machine more, then you can just enable this option. We can later enable that as well. So I'm going to click next without enabling that. So what we discussed was virtual hardware, then VM options, lots of VM options there for different types of scenarios if you want those configured. I'll click that next. So this is the full virtual machine with an operating system attached to it, ISO attached to it, and what we're expecting it to be is that it should install. Once it is fully installed, then it should also grab an IP from our DHCP living in another machine, or in this VM01. I'm going to click finish here now. And once it is finished, then I can just click on top of this machine, and I would want to power on this machine. So once I power on, and it starts, so it shows here. I'm going to click this thumbnail here to make it bigger, and it says timeout because I did not press any key on the keyboard to detect the ISO on the DVD and grab it and install it, right? So it went to the network boot then. So I need to restart this machine again. So then I can click on top of this screen here. You can see that when I put the mouse down here, it vanishes. So it just goes inside the virtual environment of this virtual machine. So I'm outside now. So I'm going to click that actions and go to power and actually I was gonna go to reset the machine, right? So power, so actions, power, reset. So once I resetting the machine will cause error loss. Yeah. I'm gonna press yes, and this time I want to click on this. Press any key to boot from CD. Well, I didn't click because I was showing you this before. We did not see that. Now I'm not gonna miss it, so I'm gonna go to actions again, power, and reset. And as soon as it shows that again, I'm gonna press any key on the keyboard. Yep, I did, and it goes ahead. Windows Boot Manager. I think I pressed F8. No, I did not. So now this option, Windows failed to start, a recent hardware or software change might be the cause. Insert your Windows installation disk and restart your computer. If you do not do this, so escape firmware settings. Now guys, there would be one thing. If it does not just go ahead with installation, we can just change the boot sequence to CD DVD from firmware. So escape UEFI firmware settings is showing there. It also says the boot configuration data for your PC is missing or contains. If anyone following and you are able to go ahead, then that's good. Otherwise, maybe you're also seeing the same thing. So it says escape. So I'll click escape, and it directly goes to the boot manager. If I click on top of that, I can drop down with down key here, down arrow key, and there it says that, hey, do you want me to boot from the only virtual disk you have? I say no. Do you want me to boot from the SATA CD-ROM that you have? I'm saying yes, because I attached an ISO there, right? So this is where I would press enter on top of this, and then press any key, and actually, oh, it's filling. What's going on? Is it filling for you guys as well?
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Sorry, Sir Frost, you're saying?
Mine went ahead.
Mine went ahead. No issues.
Oh, you have no issues? Okay.
Yep.
Hey,
Yep.
that's not fair. Okay.
I think your installation file may be corrupted because you try to copy it, overwrite
Yeah,
it.
it looks like that. You're right. I need to change the ISO then.
Yeah, maybe I think I also got corrupted. I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, it could be that. You're right. Because I never saw this before. This is the first time. What? Okay, I'll power off. Serious? Never saw it before. How? Why? When? Where? Which? Okay. I'm just powering it off and closing it.
We do a standard evaluation installation or a data center?
Oh, it's standard. GUI.
Standard you want to do it?
Yeah.
Or the
Desktop
virtual machine?
experience. Standard.
Okay.
I'll just try that once more. Power on. And yeah, this ISO is corrupted, I guess. Reset. Okay. No use. I'll just simply close the machine. Power off. Yes. And okay, so I'll go to storage and data store browser, software. This is the one, and well, I'll just add another one. Actually, this didn't work, so I'll delete this. Ouch, it took some time to upload. That's not good. I'll just quickly put another one, hopefully a smaller one. So that's inside the machine. I'll go for Vmware Workstation outside of it. And this was the one that actually showed the 2021 version. Oh, I tried to overwrite it, and then at the mid I stopped, so it's corrupt now. How can I do that? Ugh. Okay, it's also attached, so well, I'll just copy something else and quickly. In fact, it doesn't have to be server OS, but I can even go for Windows 10. Since everyone installed the server OS, I'll go for that. Copy, and then oh man, it's not looking good. So it's as soon as it copies that, then I'll upload it. Upload takes painstakingly long time. Okay, as soon as it's done, I'll just start uploading it. You know, I gave this machine 2 GB. No, 2 GB RAM, I mean. 4. So that would be, I would reach 24. So I'll give it 4 GB RAM because some operations are going on here while the machine is actually started. So guys, just to free up some more RAM, I'll just shut down E6i3 power, shut down guest. In my case, I'm just shutting down E6i3. So 4, 8, 4, 16 total. I gave some more RAM to the Win01. Okay. What? Okay. No. Blue screen of death. Okay. Let restart it. I'll just upload it again. BSOD. Got this. Okay. Control Alt Delete. Login, 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 login. So it's supposed to ship into 3 without ship into 3. Go. Yeah, and Google Chrome. Restore. So it's connected here. I'll just I was copying here in Downloads folder. 2021. I guess I was able to 6808. I think it was all copied here. 6808, yeah. Okay, so I'll simply upload it there again. Software, upload. Okay, that's going to take some time. Okay, so that seems like okay, we can do something else as well. Okay, while this is going on, we can also talk about the next steps. So if I go up, So that's one full set of steps that we were doing, and at the end, when the machine is fully installed and we give the class password and log in, we need to also open the command prompt and check if the IP address is has been received from DHCP. And the IP address should be, because if you have given the range that I've given, so the IP address should be 192.168.200.50 if you have given the same range as I did. So this should be the IP of this machine. And even when you go to Win01 and open the DHCP, so there the lease should be showing that one machine requested an IP from the DHCP. Okay, so other than that, we need to also provide 8 more network cards to each hypervisor, making them total 9 NICs. So why that many NICs or network cards? So while in my case this is okay, this is going to take time. So why 9 NICs on each of the hypervisors that's going to take part in the those advanced labs like fault tolerance, HA, and high availability, and DRS, distributed resource scheduling, and vSAN. So what happens is that we can give each machine 8 NICs because of the vendor best practices that we can implement. So how are we implementing vendor best practices for those advanced features when we are giving ESXi2 and ESXi3 only 8 NICs more? Total 9 NICs will be there, right? Could be 10. So what's with it? So the thing is that how are we able to implement vendor best practices is that when we suppose implement a feature called Vmotion, which is the migration of the virtual machine from one hypervisor to another. So the Vmotion feature, once introduced in both of the hypervisors, it has to be configured on both, so the virtual machine can migrate from, suppose, ESXi2 to ESXi3 while it is powered on and while users are working on it, and you are able to migrate it away from ESXi2 to ESXi3. So what happens is that Vmotion requires that VM, there be a VM network, VM kernel adapter be created there. Now, let me give an example of what I am trying to say here is, suppose there's it's not suppose management network service is already there, right? And you decide to add Vmotion service. Then boss says, I also want to install FT, fault tolerance. So 3 services will be added there. Management network is already there, but Vmotion and FT, you're adding more services. Now it's your choice. You want to connect these services and configure these on the default switch, which is connected to one network card. So this means that all the virtual machines that are already there, now those virtual machines are already communicating. These virtual machines traffic is going through this one virtual standard switch, which is the default switch, and it we know the name of the default switch. It's V switch 0, right? So this default switch, all the traffic is going, and that one poor network card is actually receiving the whole traffic, not only from, suppose this virtual machine has SQL Server, and this virtual machine has file server, this virtual machine has web server, right? So they're all sending their huge traffic through that one vSwitch0 and through that one network card. So then we add Vmotion and fault tolerance. Now these also require bandwidth, especially fault tolerance is bandwidth consuming service, because one machine here and one machine here, right? This is active, this is passive. So if whatever's going on in the active machine is being copied right away to the passive machine. So that's a lot of bandwidth we're looking at. And so already we know that so much traffic is going through one adapter, and then we're supposed to add fault tolerance, so we're gonna kill the bandwidth and so much data will be dropped, and otherwise also network services will be degraded. So the vendor best practice is like this, that you have, and obviously you should have enough network cards first of all. So suppose you have 8 network cards or total 9 network cards, but there are 2 network cards. So our plan is we're gonna give each service a new switch. So we're gonna be adding for Vmotion a new switch. So vSwitch 0, we're gonna keep it to management network traffic and virtual machine traffic, and we're gonna assign it 1 network card. In fact, we're going to later assign it for redundancy 2 network cards of its own. So vSwitch 0 will be getting actually 2 network cards, so if the traffic is coming to a network card, it can be divided into 2 network cards. It's gonna, as soon as you add 2 network cards and attach it to vSwitch 0, so they form a NIC team automatically. NIC teaming, right? So here, what we plan to do is, and to implement the vendor best practice is that we will just deploy another switch, which is vSwitch 1, and that vSwitch 1, suppose, is for the Vmotion service. So Vmotion service, we will tell that service, you're going to be sending and receiving all the traffic from vSwitch 1. You're not going to touch vSwitch 0 on the same hypervisor here. You have a vSwitch 1, and that vSwitch 1 is actually connecting to a NIC team of 2 separate network cards. So Vmotion traffic connects to vSwitch 1 and goes through the NIC team network interface card team together for redundancy and load balancing purpose. Then for FT, we're going to keep on doing the same thing. So for FT, we're going to create a vSwitch 2, and we're going to be also adding 2 NICs for that too, right? So now you get the idea there that vSwitch 2 will have its own NIC team, and it only fault tolerance will be using vSwitch 2, only Vmotion will be using vSwitch 1, and each vSwitch will have its own 2 network adapters offering load balancing and failover. So that's the vendor best practice, because we can do that here in a training environment, so we will do that and we'll know the steps how to do this. But in a production environment, if your physical server has enough network cards, yes, you should implement for the most bandwidth consuming feature. You can implement this, right? Yep.
Normally in production environment, what is the recommended servers need? Normally they use blade servers or they use like physical rack servers?
Sorry again?
Normally physical VM networks, the general practice is using blade servers.
Oh, Blade, yeah. Well, Blade is more expensive. So banks, I've seen, they use Blade plus rack servers as well, and it depends on how much budget is there and how less space you have, and if less space is there and more budget is there, yes, you can go for Blade servers. But yes, it doesn't actually make a difference if it's a Blade or a rack server, because Blade servers are also can be made available as many network cards as the capacity allows.
Right.
And rack servers also. Okay, so we understand that why we will be adding 8 more NICs, because we're going to be going for vendor best practice for extra virtual switches connected to their own set of 2 network cards. So that's what we can do while we are waiting for, well, I'm waiting for 85%, okay. This, so that's our next plan. I am just going to add seconds, never add 8 more NICs to each hypervisor. Now, it's not each hypervisor, although so we can divide it here as well. So ESXi02 and ESXi03 can have 8 more NICs, total 9. Now ESXi1 also is playing a very crucial role. So it can have actually at least one more network adapter, so 2 network adapters available for the VCSA, vCenter Server Application Appliance. So ESXi01 can have, or we can just give 4 more NICs total. Well, actually it should be so 1 NIC is there, yeah, so it should be not odd, it should be even, right? So we'll just go for total 10 and 9 more. So because we're going to use pair, we can have 3 more, total 4. So let's do that, and then throughout the course we don't have to really go for this, because if suppose we don't do it now and we go for fault tolerance, then how about we install vendor best practice? Okay, how? We're going to add 2 more network cards. Oh, so this means that we have to restart the hypervisor again, because when you add network cards you have to restart the hypervisor. It's not hot add feature available for adding network cards. So let's go ahead. ESXi2, 9 more, total 10, and then ESXi3, 9 more, total 10 network cards, and ESXi1, 3 more. So ESXi2, 3 we can actually restart as well, but ESXi1 I'm waiting for that upload to happen. I'll just check that again. Oh, it's done. Yay. Okay, if it is done, I'll just click close and simply start my virtual machine. In fact, I'll just try to give the path of this to this virtual machine. How? I'm going to right click on the virtual machine, go to edit settings, and I'm doing that because it did not work for me. Oh, what happened? It was not connected. Really? And data store to that's right. So file, connect that power on, and I'll click the browse here and go to software and give this path. Select, save, and power on. Select on the thumbnail and actions. I'll just restart again because I missed that pressing any key on the keyboard to grab that installation. Now I pressed any key. Are you kidding me? What's going on here? The boot configurations data for your PC missing or contains errors. So maybe that virtual machine is a problem. I'll just quickly create another virtual machine and give that machine a, which is really strange. What did I do with this machine? So I'll just right click and delete this machine and go for another one. Create new virtual machine. Create new virtual machine. Next, VM01 dash for no surprises, and Windows. I'll go a bit quick now. 2016. Next, data store. Yeah, next, and thin provisioned, but I'll stay within 70. And that's it. And I'll go for the host store ISO, software, Windows, select, nothing else we configured, so next and finish. And start this virtual machine. Okay, something seriously wrong with my whole setup. The second virtual machine I started, and it's the other operating system. Okay, I'll have to figure that out. So Franz, you were able to finish that installation, or?
Session is done.
Oh, okay. You were able to log in?
You want to share my screen?
Yeah, we can in fact go with your screen as well if you are okay with that.
Yeah, sure. Let me just log on to. Well, I'm using my laptop for the Cisco WebEx. Let me launch. Yeah. And I'm okay.
If
Let me
it's so easy,
give you the.
otherwise we're going for another lab as well.
Yeah. Just a minute. Okay. How do I share my screen? Yeah, sure.
All right. So yeah, I can. Oh, okay. And thank you. There you go. So wow, man, amazing. Well, you logged in, and then you may also go to the command prompt and so yeah, here and cmd and IP config. Just that IP should be there. Yeah, it is there. So it's 200.50 is actually there. So your machine actually is, well, your network configuration plus the virtual machine has. Now this is what I wanted to show, and thank you for letting us see that on your side. So guys, yeah, I'm gonna be figuring out what happened to my machine, but this is what I wanted to show, that once the Windows is installed, then it just looks like this. Later we will be Vmotioning this machine once we have the storage there. So thank you. This is where we wanted to reach there. Also, one more thing actually, if you go to actions on the right side, in that, yeah, and we needed to actually deploy the VMware Tools. If you haven't done that,
I've done that.
You've done that. Okay, that's very good. So you've deployed the VMware Tools already. Where it was guest OS, right? Or
guest OS. I've already means
this one.
Yeah.
Okay, so just wanted to have this in the video as well, and that's perfect. So you're cool. You're good. So thank you for sharing that, and I'll just switch to my screen now.
You want to take control of the screen?
No, actually, for the installation of the virtual machine, this much we needed to do.
Okay.
And now, yeah, if you want, you can just shut down this machine, or you want to keep it up. Yeah, it's okay. So, but this much I needed to show in the video as well, and in our lab. But for my side, I'll later try to troubleshoot what happened to my machine. So, yep, I'm gonna just go to my screen now, and let's carry on with the rest of the labs.
Okay, let me exit from here. Just a minute.
No, if I click share one, then it will just come to my screen.
Yeah.
So I will stop sharing content as soon as you start. Okay. And thank you for that again. And chat. Okay. I'll drag it on the other screen. And yeah, so what we were talking about, we can actually do that now. And that was the deployment of 9 more NICs on only ESXi 2 and ESXi 3, and then we need to restart both one by one. Now for saving up some RAM, I had to shut down ESXi 3 anyway, so one by one we'll just add it on both hypervisor. How do we do that? So I'll just go ahead. Well, while I'm on this screen, I'll just send it again. And there, seriously? Okay.
ISO ID, so.
And I changed the ISO, so I'll keep on changing now. I'll download the latest one. Yes, there's something wrong, yeah. Okay, so here I'm going to go to E6I2, which will be taking part in the advanced labs of HA, DRS, FT. So I need to have enough network cards here. I'm going to go to E6I2, right click on top of E6I2 here, and I'll go to settings. So in a production environment, you would go down to the data center and then take a downtime maintenance window and shut down the hypervisor, move away all the machines from there if it's not a new one, and then shut down the hypervisor and add more network cards which you may have ordered from the company. But here we're going to just we have just one network card, right? So I'm going to be adding 9 more, making a total of 10. So, and yes, all those network cards have to be on same VMnet 15, so they could all communicate with those features that are there in other hypervisors. So I'm going to be clicking add button, and then I'm going to go for network adapter. And once I click finish here, so it's by default on NAT. I want it to be on VMnet 15. Why? Because my other machines are all on VMnet 15. So that's the first one. If I click anywhere else, it shows now it is on VMnet 15. I'll just quickly go ahead, network adapter, finish, custom 15. Then I'll click add again, network adapter, finish, custom VMnet 15, add network adapter, finish, custom VMnet 15. After some time, we get bored to death with this. And so 3, 6, 4 more. So throughout the course, we don't have to do then all this and restart. We'll just add once and restart once. As far as the adding network card related restarts are required. So three, one more. Okay, I'll press OK here, and I'll send it to a restart. E6I2, I'm going to go up there, I'm going to go to power, and then restart guest, and restart. So E6I2, total 10 network cards are there. E6I3, in my case, it is shut down already, so I'll just have to start it. It will detect all the network cards. Here is E6I3, add network adapter, finish, add network adapter. Oh, I didn't change the Vmware.
Are we adding 9 network adapters to 2 and 3?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you.
Network adapter, and three, two more. Okay, so yeah, 10. Well, in my case, it was already shut down, so I'll just So the first one is ESXi2 is already restarted after 9 network cards. Total 10 has been there, or 9 has been added. So I'm going to just simply start the ESXi3 now. So I'm quickly adding okay, I haven't added to the machine. So I'm going for Windows 10 as a desperate measure now, just to totally change the OS type. Okay, so I was able to add 9 network cards, and then I'm able to restart ESXi2. Then I added 9 network cards, and I'm able to restart ESXi3 as well. And ESXi1, oh yeah, so we can add 3 more network cards to just ESXi1. So I have put it on OneNote. Hopefully you all are able to connect to OneNote as well. At the start of the class, try to just make a habit of connecting to the Netplus OneNote, because what I'm doing is I'm just putting steps there, and then I'm following those steps here. So you can also check those steps directly on OneNote. So here ESXi1 can have 3 more, total 4. So this means it has 1 already and 3 more. I'm going to be adding on ESXi1, and in my case, okay, my Windows 10 is not going there, but I'll just add ESXi1, and by the end of the class, you can just shut down ESXi1 as well. Or if ESXi1 in your case is not doing anything, then you can restart it now or later is also okay. I'm going to ESXi1 as well and adding 3 more network cards, while ESXi2 having 9 more, ESXi3 having 9 more, ESXi1 will have 3 more. Add. So later we can use them for high availability. Okay, so I have total 4 in ESXi1, and total 10 is in ESXi2, total 10 ESXi3. 4, 10, 10. Okay, it is uploaded here. I am again going to data store browser, going for upload. This time uploading Windows 10, and it may take its time. So I can duplicate this browser. On one browser, it's just uploading. Other browser, I can still work on something else. So what we need to do further is, obviously in next class we're going to go for the full-fledged VCSA deployment, because that's going to take a 45-minute of deployment. It's extensive. It takes a long time for VCSA, and before that we need to discuss in detail what is VCSA, how it is deployed. So before that we can just try to have the environment ready for VCSA. Now there is another thing that we can go for, and that is prep for software SAN. me just explain that with diagram so we would understand what we're talking about. Preparation for software SAN. What does that mean? So our software SAN is Windows based, and we will deploy it on Win01, and also we will be adding 3 disks for 300 GB each on Win01. We will format these disks and name them 101, 102, 103, and we will install iSCSI software on Windows. It's actually a feature. We will be converting each new disk as an iSCSI disk, and make each disk, right? So make them available for the 2 hypervisors, ESXi02 and ESXi03.
Question. For the PCs, are they going to need 900 gigs more space?
For the PC, sorry. Oh, VC, yeah.
Well, you're saying you're going to be adding 300 gigs for 3 disks, so that's 900 gigs, and my PC has got 463 gigs total.
Yeah, this is thin provisioned, so it's not going to take any space on the physical disk.
Oh, okay. So they're just logic.
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you for clearing that.
Okay, so we're going to do the preparation for this. Now, how does it look like on well, yeah, we need to understand that, but it's kind of time is short for this whole thing. If I go up and try to explain this, so we will be able to just talk about it then, and we will be doing that in next class if time's up. So diagrams, yeah. So what's the plan with this? I'll go for this. Okay, so the plan is that the virtualization environment is not fully professional without a without a SAN solution or without a high availability storage. So software SAN. Okay, so it says just reminders to need with these is not showing local storage. Oh yeah, sure, Joseph. Yeah, we got by the end of the class we'll connect, or you can let me know, right? So yes, I'll be there to help you out with that. So software SAN here, what we need to be doing, so we can just discuss that now, and I will then repeat that in next class as well, because it would have been then 1 week and we would have forgotten it. But we're going to be creating 3 disks here, and those 3 disks, why 3? No, it could be 5, it could be 10, 20, 30, it could be any number, it could be 2 as well, minimum 2. So these 3 disks, 300 GB each. And well, what we intend to do with that, so suppose this is a SAN, and over the network we will be providing these disks to ESXi2 and 3, but then while I said that we should be providing it for the 2 hypervisors, why not 3 hypervisors? So if we go ahead and provide these 3 disks, now each disk will be provided to each hypervisor. So what's the logic with that? So this disk provided to, sorry, okay, and then this disk provided to this hypervisor, and this hypervisor, and this hypervisor, right? And then this disk will also be provided to this hypervisor, and this hypervisor. Now these are too many lines and kind of confusing as well, I guess. So the disks normally are going to be each disk attached to each hypervisor. So that's what I'm trying to create here. And this disk attached to this hypervisor, and this disk attached to this hypervisor. And what's the purpose of that? Obviously, the best practice is that when you create a virtual machine, that virtual machine's virtual disk should not be placed in the local storage based data store. The virtual machine's virtual disk should be on a SAN based data store. So we obviously, when we attach these, map these disks over the network to the 3 hypervisors, we will be creating data stores on top of that, because virtual machine does not see a disk. Virtual machine sees a data store, right? So it could be too many lines here, so next time I'll make it a bit more neater, so you could understand how it really works. Virtual machine created here would be actually going for a data store that is on top of a LAN, or a data store on top of a shared disk coming from over the network, right? So that is the best practice that you would create, and that virtual machine, and suppose the virtual machine is this hypervisor, so it's using maybe this data store, so that's the best practice. And if the virtual machine's virtual disk is on local disk based data store and this physical server goes down, then you would be waiting for that physical disk server to come back for the virtual machine to be, or virtual disk to be accessed, and all the critical data to be accessed. But if it is on a shared disk, so this LAN or disk is attached to this hypervisor, is the same one that is attached to this hypervisor, is the same LAN is attached to this hypervisor as well. So when you place virtual machine virtual disk on the data store that is on top of this LAN, so this virtual disk is available from this hypervisor as well. This virtual disk is available from this hypervisor as well. Why? Because the underlying LAN is attached to this and this and this. So anything you put on top is available from this and this hypervisor as well. So that's the benefit. If the hypervisor goes down, physical server goes down, that disk was never on this hypervisor. That disk was on a shared disk over the network that is attached to other hypervisors as well. So from there, the users can still connect to that disk. So it's crucial to have some kind of highly available storage, and SAN is the one solution that provides it. So that's the whole idea behind having a software SAN. And then Vmotion also works really fine here. Now, well, it's already 5:42 in US, 6:42 in Canada. So even if we start this is a process. This is a longer procedure here. So in next class, what we intend to do is that we're gonna deploy software SAN, as well as we're gonna deploy the vCenter server appliance. So, and for that we need to upgrade. Well, we're gonna increase the RAM of ESXi1 to at least 12 GB, while the deployment of ESXi is VCSA is going on. We can even shut down ESXi 3 and 3 and 2 both, and then we can just deploy the VCSA by increasing its RAM to maybe 20 GB RAM here just for this machine and shutting down those two. So we could deploy it faster. It takes 45 minutes just for its deployment, and obviously before that we're going to plan it, we're going to discuss it. What is it, VCSA? What are the features of VCSA? So all that then has to happen. This is also a longer procedure that might take more than what we have left here in terms of time. So we've discussed this. Then we're going to add 3 disks here. We're going to format them. We're going to convert them to iSCSI after installing iSCSI feature. Then we're going to actually map them to the 3 hypervisors, right? And then later we're going to deploy ESXi 01 on top of these shared disks. We're going to deploy VCSA virtual machine on top of these shared disks, and other future virtual machines will be all deployed on these shared disks over the network that will be showing inside each hypervisor. Okay, so guys, this would be it, because yeah, just for 15 minutes left. So instead of starting that and stopping it in the middle, let's start this software SAN and VCSA deployment in next class, and try to reach here before the next class, those who are not, and I'll try to upload this video on tonight or by tomorrow. If it's not there, you can just WhatsApp me or email me, hey teach, where's the video? So I'll just put it up there. If there are any questions, let me know. Otherwise, Joseph can then let me know what's going on. And others, let's see you next Saturday at the class, so we could continue building up. Yep.
Okay. Take care.
Okay.
All right.
Take care.
All right. Do you want me to actually share my screen so you can see what's going on?
Yes, Joseph.
All right. Let me see how I can do this. Let's see. Share.